The Germans have spent decades convincing the world that luxury compact SUVs are their exclusive domain. Munich, Stuttgart, and Ingolstadt have built empires on this assumption. But Coventry is about to remind everyone that British engineering never truly went away. It simply waited for the right moment to strike back. The 2027 Jaguar E-Pace represents something the German establishment hoped would never materialize, a legitimate threat to their carefully constructed hierarchy. And the numbers emerging from early testing suggest this isn't just marketing rhetoric. This is a fundamental shift in the luxury compact SUV landscape. For those of us who remember when British sports cars and luxury saloons were the benchmark against which all others were measured, the past 4 decades have required a certain degree of patience. We watched as Jaguar stumbled through various ownership changes, witnessed quality control issues that tarnished the badge, and endured the painful reality of seeing our friends and colleagues choose German alternatives because, frankly, it made more practical sense. But automotive heritage runs deeper than quarterly sales figures. The engineering philosophy that produced the E-Type, the XG220, and dominated Le Mans in the 1950s never disappeared. It evolved, refined itself, and learned from its mistakes. The 2027 E-Pace represents the culmination of that evolutionary process. What makes this particular model year significant isn't just incremental improvement. Jaguar has fundamentally reimagined what this vehicle represents in their lineup. While the previous generation E-Pace served admirably as an entry point into the brand, the 2027 model assumes a more aggressive posture. This is Jaguar's direct assault on the established German order, and they've engineered it specifically to exploit weaknesses in the BMW X3, Mercedes-Benz GLC, and Audi Q5 that owners of those vehicles have quietly tolerated for years. Let's address the elephant in the showroom immediately. For the past 2 decades, choosing a German luxury SUV meant accepting certain trade-offs. You received impeccable build quality and brand prestige, but you paid handsomely for routine maintenance. You enjoyed advanced technology, but often struggled with overcomplicated interfaces that required consulting the owner's manual for basic functions. You experienced capable performance, but frequently within parameters that felt constrained by corporate safety margins and market segmentation strategies. The question Jaguar posed to their engineering teams was deceptively simple. What if we eliminated those compromises? The 2027 E-Pace begins with powertrains that directly challenge German conventional wisdom. The base engine, a turbocharged 2.0-liter 4-cylinder producing 246 horsepower, matches the entry-level offerings from Munich and Stuttgart while delivering something the Germans struggle to achieve: genuinely engaging throttle response across the entire rev range. Too many modern turbocharged engines from German manufacturers feel like they were calibrated by committee, with power delivery that prioritizes smoothness over driver involvement. Jaguar's engineers, benefiting from decades of performance car development, tuned this engine to wake up the moment your right foot moves. The result is an immediacy to power delivery that makes daily driving noticeably more satisfying. But here's where it gets interesting, and where Jaguar's strategy reveals its sophistication. The mid-range offering, a 3.0-liter turbocharged inline-6 producing 395 horsepower, doesn't just compete with equivalent German engines. It fundamentally embarrasses them on value proposition. When you configure a BMW X3 M40i or a Mercedes-AMG GLC 43 to similar specification levels, you're approaching price territories that make the Jaguar look like a bargain, and we're not talking about minor savings. Early pricing strategies suggest a differential of £8,000 to £12,000 depending on market and specification. For buyers in their peak earning years who understand the time value of money, that's not insignificant. The engineering underneath tells an even more compelling story. Jaguar retained their aluminum-intensive architecture, which provides 2 crucial advantages the Germans can't easily replicate without massive capital expenditure on new manufacturing facilities. First, the weight savings translate directly into improved handling dynamics and fuel efficiency. Second, and this matters enormously for long-term ownership, aluminum doesn't corrode the way steel does. If you're keeping this vehicle for 8 to 10 years, which many buyers in our demographic do, that aluminum structure will age considerably better than the steel alternatives from Germany. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jaguar's reliability history has been, shall we say, complicated. This is a legitimate concern that anyone considering this purchase must weigh carefully. However, The data from the past 5 model years tells a different story than the reputation suggests. According to J.D. Power's vehicle dependability studies, recent Jaguar models have been trending steadily upward in reliability metrics. More importantly, Jaguar Land Rover's investment in new manufacturing processes and quality control systems has begun producing measurable results. The 2024 and 2025 model year vehicles are experiencing warranty claim rates that now fall within industry averages. Not segment-leading, mind you, but no longer the outliers they once were. Here's something the automotive press rarely discusses honestly. German reliability isn't what it used to be either. The complexity of modern German vehicles, with their intricate electronic systems and overly engineered solutions to simple problems, has created reliability challenges that didn't exist 20 years ago. Talk to any independent mechanic who works on premium European vehicles, and they'll tell you that a 10-year-old BMW or Mercedes requires just as much patience and financial commitment as a Jaguar of the same vintage. The difference is that Jaguar owners tend to be more vocal about their problems, while German brand owners quietly absorb the costs because admitting reliability issues feels like admitting a mistake in their purchase decision. The 2027 E-Pace also introduces Jaguar's most sophisticated all-wheel drive system to date, and this is where British engineering philosophy diverges most notably from the German approach. BMW's xDrive, Mercedes' 4MATIC, and Audi's Quattro systems are all excellent, but they're calibrated primarily for safety and all-weather capability. Jaguar's system, drawn from lessons learned in their performance division, adds a layer of dynamic capability that makes the vehicle noticeably more engaging on challenging roads. The torque vectoring happens more aggressively, the system allows more rear bias before intervening, and the overall feel is of a vehicle that wants to be driven with enthusiasm rather than simply transported in comfort. This matters more than you might initially think. One of the quiet disappointments many owners express about their German SUVs is how isolated they feel from the driving experience. Everything is refined to the point of numbness. The steering provides no real feedback. The suspension smooths out everything, including the information a driver needs to place the vehicle accurately, and the overall experience becomes antiseptic. It's competent, certainly, but it's not engaging. For enthusiasts who remember when driving was an active rather than passive experience, this represents a fundamental loss. Jaguar's chassis engineers clearly spoke with people who share that frustration. The E-Pace steering system retains enough feedback to tell you what's happening at the contact patches, without becoming heavy or tiresome in urban traffic. The suspension, even in comfort mode, doesn't completely isolate you from the road surface. You feel enough to stay connected to the driving experience while filtering out genuine harshness. It's a more sophisticated balance than the binary choice German manufacturers often present between comfort and sport modes. The interior presentation deserves extended discussion, because this is where Jaguar has traditionally struggled to match German standards. The 2027 model represents their most successful attempt, yet at creating an environment that feels genuinely premium without resorting to imitation. The Germans have spent decades perfecting a particular aesthetic language. Precise panel gaps, substantial switchgear, logical ergonomics. Jaguar could have simply copied that template. And frankly, previous attempts often felt like they were trying to out-German the Germans. The 2027 E-Pace takes a different approach. The materials quality matches anything from Stuttgart or Munich, but the design philosophy emphasizes British sporting heritage rather than Teutonic precision. The seats, for instance, feature more aggressive bolstering than you'll find in equivalent German vehicles. They hold you properly during enthusiastic driving without becoming uncomfortable during long motorway journeys. The driving position feels more like a sports car than a family SUV, with the steering wheel and pedals aligned in a way that encourages proper technique. These are details that matter to people who actually enjoy driving rather than simply requiring transportation. The technology interface represents Jaguar's most significant improvement over previous generations. Earlier Jaguar infotainment systems were, to be charitable, problematic. Slow processors, unintuitive menus, and reliability issues plagued the ownership experience. The 2027 system, running on entirely new architecture, finally provides an experience that matches or exceeds German standards. Response times are immediate, the graphics are clear and attractive, and most importantly, the learning curve is reasonable. You don't need to spend 3 days with the owner's manual to connect your phone or adjust the climate control settings. Here's a particularly thoughtful detail. Jaguar retained physical controls for essential functions. While German manufacturers have increasingly moved everything into touchscreen menus in pursuit of minimalist interior design, Jaguar recognized that actual human beings driving actual vehicles need to adjust temperature, volume, and driving modes without looking away from the road. The result is an interface that feels modern without sacrificing usability. For those of us whose eyesight isn't quite what it was 20 years ago, this practical approach proves far less frustrating than fumbling through multiple touchscreen menus while trying to navigate rush hour traffic. The hybrid and electric variants deserve particular attention because they reveal how seriously Jaguar takes the challenge from German competitors. The plug-in hybrid E-Pace offers 42 miles of electric-only range, which genuinely covers most daily commuting without burning petrol. More importantly, the transition between electric and petrol power happens more seamlessly than in competing German systems. BMW's plug-in hybrids, while competent, often exhibit a noticeable hesitation during power source transitions. Mercedes has largely solved this problem, but at the cost of additional weight and complexity. Jaguar's system feels more integrated, more natural in its operation. The fully electric variant, expected to arrive 6 months after the conventional models, represents Jaguar's most ambitious assault on German dominance. With a projected range of 310 miles and charging capabilities that allow 80% replenishment in 32 minutes, it directly challenges the BMW X3 and Mercedes EQC. But Jaguar adds something the Germans haven't quite mastered, making an electric SUV that still feels like a Jaguar. Too many electric vehicles, regardless of manufacturer, feel generically smooth and quiet. Jaguar's engineers worked extensively on creating artificial but convincing feedback through the chassis and steering to maintain driver engagement. The results, based on early drive reports, suggest they've succeeded where others have struggled. Let's discuss ownership costs, because this is where the mature buyer makes practical decisions regardless of emotional attachment to badges. The 2027 E-Pace comes with a 5-year, unlimited mileage warranty that includes routine maintenance for the first 3 years. Compare this to BMW's 4-year, 50,000-mile warranty or Mercedes' 4-year, unlimited mileage coverage, and Jaguar's offering becomes notably more attractive. The included maintenance particularly matters because Jaguar service costs, while not inexpensive, typically run 15 to 20% lower than equivalent German brands. Over 5 years of ownership, this differential adds up to several £1,000s in real savings. Insurance costs represent another area where the E-Pace demonstrates competitive advantages. Insurance groups for the base model fall slightly lower than equivalent BMW and Mercedes variants, primarily due to superior theft deterrent systems and lower repair costs for minor collision damage. That aluminum structure we discussed earlier? It's actually easier and less expensive to repair than the complex steel structures in German vehicles because damaged panels can be replaced rather than requiring extensive structural straightening and welding. Fuel economy deserves honest discussion because manufacturer claims and real-world results often diverge significantly. The turbocharged 4-cylinder E-Pace achieves approximately 32 miles per gallon in combined driving, which matches the BMW X3 and slightly exceeds the Mercedes GLC. The inline-6 returns around 26 miles per gallon, again competitive with German equivalents. More importantly, these figures represent real-world driving rather than optimized test cycles. Jaguar seems to have learned from past criticism about unrealistic fuel economy claims and now publishes more conservative figures that owners can actually achieve. The resale value question requires careful consideration because this has historically represented Jaguar's Achilles heel. German luxury vehicles, particularly BMW and Mercedes, have traditionally held their value better than British alternatives. However, recent market data suggests this gap is narrowing considerably. 3-year-old Jaguar models are retaining 52 to 55% of their original value, compared to 58 to 62% for equivalent German vehicles. Yes, that's still a differential, but it's not the catastrophic depreciation Jaguar vehicles experienced 15 years ago. More importantly, if you're buying rather than leasing, that depreciation becomes someone else's problem when you eventually sell. And for the second or third owner, a depreciated Jaguar represents extraordinary value. The dealer network and service accessibility in key markets has improved dramatically over the past decade. In the United States, Jaguar Land Rover has invested heavily in expanding their dealer footprint and improving service capabilities. In European markets, particularly the UK and Germany, ironically, Jaguar service centers now match German brands for convenience and capability. This matters enormously for long-term ownership satisfaction. Nothing frustrates owners more than struggling to find qualified service technicians or waiting weeks for routine maintenance appointments. Market analysts are watching the 2027 E-Pace launch with particular interest because it represents a test case for whether traditional luxury brands can successfully challenge established segment leaders. Early pre-order numbers from the UK market suggest strong interest, with first-year production already allocated through the first quarter. German market reception has been more cautious, which isn't surprising given the cultural attachment to domestic brands. However, dealers in Frankfurt and Munich report higher than expected inquiry levels, suggesting that even in Germany's home market, buyers are willing to consider alternatives. Industry expert opinions have been notably positive, with Autocar awarding the E-Pace a rare 5-star rating and specifically praising its driver engagement and value proposition. Car and Driver's long-term test of a pre-production model highlighted reliability improvements and praised the powertrain refinement. Even German automotive publications, typically skeptical of British vehicles, have acknowledged that Jaguar has produced something genuinely competitive. Automotor Un Sports Comparison Test placed the E-Pace second overall, behind the BMW X3, but ahead of both the Mercedes GLC and Audi Q5. Real-world owner testimonials from early adopters paint an encouraging picture. The common thread running through online forums and owner reviews emphasizes the emotional satisfaction of driving the E-Pace compared to German alternatives. Owners consistently mention enjoying their daily commutes more, feeling more connected to the driving experience, and appreciating the relatively exclusive nature of the brand. These aren't minor considerations. If you're spending £40,000 to £60,000 on a vehicle you'll drive for the next 5 to 10 years, enjoying the experience matters more than many people acknowledge. The safety credentials deserve mention because modern buyers, particularly those with families, rightly prioritize protection systems. The E-Pace achieves a 5-star Euro NCAP rating, with particularly strong scores in adult occupant protection and safety assistance features. The autonomous emergency braking system functions effectively in real-world testing. The adaptive cruise control maintains appropriate following distances without feeling overly cautious, and the blind spot monitoring proves genuinely useful rather than unnecessarily intrusive. These systems match German competitors in functionality, while avoiding the overcomplicated implementations that sometimes plague Mercedes and BMW vehicles. Here's something worth considering that rarely appears in professional reviews: the emotional component of vehicle ownership. For many of us who came of age when British automotive engineering led the world, there's genuine satisfaction in seeing Jaguar produce something that can stand toe-to-toe with German competitors. This isn't blind nationalism or nostalgia clouding judgment. It's recognition that diversity in the automotive landscape benefits everyone. When Jaguar succeeds, it forces BMW, Mercedes, and Audi to improve rather than resting on established reputations. Competition drives innovation, and the 2027 E-Pace represents meaningful competition in a segment that had become perhaps too comfortable. The environmental considerations also matter to an increasingly large portion of the target demographic. The E-Pace's lighter aluminum construction requires less energy to propel, which translates directly into lower fuel consumption and reduced emissions. The hybrid variants allow genuinely useful electric-only operation for daily tasks, while maintaining long-range capability for weekend trips or holiday travel. Jaguar's manufacturing facilities have made substantial progress toward carbon neutrality, which matters to buyers who consider the entire lifecycle environmental impact, rather than just tailpipe emissions. The customization options available for the 2027 E-Pace actually exceed what German competitors typically offer. Jaguar provides a wider range of exterior colors, including several striking metallic and pearlescent options that allow genuine individuality. Interior trim combinations offer more variety than BMW's sometimes conservative choices. While avoiding the occasionally garish options Mercedes occasionally presents, you can genuinely create an E-Pace that reflects personal taste rather than selecting from a narrow range of predetermined packages. The warranty coverage extends beyond mechanical components to include the navigation system, infotainment hardware, and even certain wear items like brake pads and wiper blades. This comprehensive approach reduces ownership anxiety and demonstrates confidence in component quality. German manufacturers typically exclude these items from warranty coverage, leaving owners to absorb costs that, while individually small, accumulate over time. So where does this leave us in evaluating whether the 2027 Jaguar E-Pace genuinely crushes German luxury pride, or whether that's simply provocative marketing rhetoric? The honest answer requires acknowledging both strengths and remaining weaknesses. The E-Pace doesn't dominate its German competitors in every measurable category. BMW still offers slightly sharper handling in the sportiest variants. Mercedes provides marginally better ride quality in comfort-oriented specifications. Audi's interior build quality maintains a slight edge in perceived solidity. These are real differences that matter to specific buyers with particular priorities. However, the E-Pace achieves something more valuable than segment leadership in individual categories. It offers a genuinely compelling alternative that matches German competitors in most areas while exceeding them in driver engagement, value proposition, and emotional appeal. For buyers who prioritize enjoying their driving experience, who appreciate the heritage and character of British automotive engineering, and who recognize that badge prestige alone doesn't justify significant price premiums, the E-Pace represents the most convincing argument Jaguar has made in decades. The true measure of success won't appear in first-year sales figures or professional review scores. It will emerge over the next 5 to 10 years as ownership experiences accumulate and word-of-mouth recommendations shape market perceptions. If Jaguar maintains the quality standards evident in the 2027 E-Pace, if the reliability improvements prove durable rather than temporary, and if the ownership experience delivers on the promise suggested by early evaluations, then yes, German luxury pride should feel genuinely threatened. This isn't about Jaguar destroying BMW, Mercedes, or Audi. The German manufacturers are too well established, too competent, and too resourceful to face existential threats from a single competitor model. But it is about disrupting comfortable assumptions that German luxury SUVs represent the only serious choice in this segment. It's about reminding the market that British engineering, when properly funded and competently executed, can produce vehicles that don't merely compete but genuinely excel. And it's about offering buyers a choice that respects their intelligence, their enthusiasm for driving, and their desire for something that hasn't been focus grouped into anonymous competence. For those who've waited patiently for Jaguar to fulfill its potential, who've watched with frustration as the brand stumbled and recovered repeatedly over the past decades, the 2027 E-Pace represents vindication. This is the vehicle Jaguar should have been building all along, confident without being arrogant, capable without being clinical, premium without being pretentious. Whether it ultimately captures significant market share from established German competitors remains to be seen. But it has already accomplished something arguably more important. It's reminded everyone that the luxury compact SUV segment is no longer German territory by default. Coventry has returned to the conversation, and Munich, Stuttgart, and Ingolstadt will need to respond accordingly. The question isn't whether you should consider the E-Pace instead of a German alternative. The question is whether you can afford not to. The automotive establishment has operated under a comfortable assumption for the past 30 years. Compact luxury SUVs belong to Germany. The hierarchy seemed immutable. BMW defined sporting pretensions, Mercedes epitomized refined comfort, Audi mastered technological sophistication. British brands could produce charming sports cars or stately limousines, but the practical luxury SUV segment remained firmly in Teutonic hands. The 2027 Jaguar E-Pace arrives not to politely request consideration, but to fundamentally challenge that entire presumption. And the early evidence suggests this isn't optimistic marketing spin. Something genuinely significant is happening in Coventry. Those of us with memories stretching back to when British engineering dominated international motorsport understand what's been lost over the intervening decades. We watched Jaguar win Le Mans, saw their saloons embarrass German competitors on racetracks across Europe,